at play here as well. And according to the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Dan Kane,
scaling up the nuclear activities in the longer run could be an option. There has been discussions that the damages cannot be denied against the nuclear facilities, but
of the Bush administration, of course, but that was certainly a message that was sent, not open-ended and no regime change. But the question here is, and we do not have an answer to it, we will potentially know in the coming days or weeks or months, what is the aftermath of this? What is the fallout? Are U.S. forces at risk? Is the nuclear program destroyed? The president, of course, used the word obliterated. His chairman of the Joint Chiefs did not go that far at all. So
shipping in the Persian Gulf, and
at the moment, though, given some of the indications from the U.S. on the perceived level of success.
Colin Clark, it's really good to get your breakdown of that, and we appreciate it. Thank you very much indeed for your time. UN nuclear watchdog chief Rafael Grossi has posted on X saying he's calling an emergency meeting of the IAEA Board of Governors after the U.S. military strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities. The off-site radiation levels in Iran are not reported to have increased, but the IAEA says it's going to provide more information.
Here on DW.
That Israel will not succeed with that, and situation will turn into this protracted war, attrition war.
The return of that animal spirit from
Tuesday through Saturday on CNN.
Today, we live in an unpredictable environment, and news races around the world at breakneck speed.
How do you feel being in here with these badly wounded soldiers?
I was just being criticized for how I looked.
My show brings you the latest news and top news makers.
What do you want people to know about mortality?
These scenes have been the most emotional scenes for Syrians.
It's corny to say, but it's about love. It's the only thing worth living for.
Amanpour on CNN.
Tonight. With his MAGA allies divided on Iran, what will Trump do? Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem, former Trump advisor John Bolton, and Israeli President Isaac Herzog weigh in, plus Democratic Senator Adam Schiff. State of the Union. Tonight on CNN.
This is CNN. More people get their news from CNN than any other news source.
also killed in attacks on displaced people living in tents to the west of Khan Yunis. Stay with us on Al Jazeera. And I'm Rob Matheson. This is Al Jazeera live from Doha with our continuing coverage of the U.S. strikes on Iran. Iran accuses the U.S. of betraying international diplomacy by attacking 3 of its nuclear sites.
We were in the middle of talks and negotiation with Europeans. Happened only 2 days ago in Geneva, when this time Americans decided to blow it up.
Overnight, President Trump ordered stealth bombers to strike at the heart of Iran's nuclear program.
The lead B-2 dropped 2 GBU-57 massive ordnance penetrator weapons on the first of several aim points at Fordow.
And also ahead, an internet blackout ends in Gaza, but not the killing. At least 6 Palestinians are killed overnight by Israel. Iran's foreign minister is accusing the United States of betraying diplomacy. Abbas Araghchi made the comments after the U.S. military's attack on Iran's 3 key nuclear sites. Araghchi says diplomacy is no longer an option, as the Americans only understand the language of threat and force. Julie Degar reports.
The aftermath of strikes that could reshape the region. The U.S. military says it's bombed 3 of Iran's key nuclear sites, Fordow, Natanz and Esfahan. US President Donald Trump described it as necessary to prevent Iran's development of a nuclear weapon, despite the International Atomic Agency and his own intelligence chief saying there's no evidence to support that allegation.
It is an outrageous, grave, and unprecedented violation of the fundamental principles of the Charter of the United Nations and international law. The warmongering and lawless administration in Washington is solely and fully responsible for the dangerous consequences and far-reaching implications of its act of aggression.
President Trump claimed Iran's major nuclear facilities had been totally obliterated, a statement denied by the parliamentary member for Qom, where Fordow is based. Qasem Ravanbash said damage was not as severe as reported in US media and was only above ground and could be restored. And the US attack legitimized the use of military operations against its own forces in the region. Iran's foreign minister says Washington has crossed a very big red line.
While President Trump was elected on a platform of putting an end to America's costly involvement of forever wars in our part of the world, he has betrayed not only Iran by abusing our commitment to diplomacy, but also deceived his own voters by submitting to the wishes of a wanted war criminal who has grown accustomed to exploiting the lives and wealth of American citizens to further the Israeli regime's objectives.
have dreamed of delivering the final blow to Iran.
Israel, and in the coming days, Trump started to weigh in on, started to weigh this option of whether to join Israel's war or not. And now we learned that over the course of these days, he had
do so much of research to find out information about companies. So think you are investing you realize that as a private market investor, you have to do so much of research to find out information about companies. So think you.
Gene. Pa believes that legacies are earned, not inherited.
On Singapore Tonight, counter-terrorism unit patrols at key areas to respond.
I think this scenario is not possible because we still have sane people and smart people in Iran and in America, and they will find a way out of this because it's not possible. I mean, it can't continue this way.
Benjamin Netanyahu has spent pretty much his entire career obsessed with the threat he believes Iran poses to Israel. So in his statements early this morning, he could hardly contain his glee, really, at the fact that the US had finally agreed to get involved under Donald Trump. And he congratulated Trump on his decision, which he said would change history. What do you think he meant by that comment?
Well, he's just being over dramatic, unless he is talking about the history of Israel, because Israel is not going to survive this. Mark my words. He thinks he won, but he didn't. He lost everybody. He lost the world, he lost his friends, he lost even many Jewish groups around the world are now saying this is not in my name. And that's a catastrophe for Israel, for the future of Israel. He's not serving Israel. He may be serving his own interest by staying in power and fighting another war. Maybe after this war, he will find another war because this is the only way not to to go to prison or to court for his corruption, for the corruption charges against him.
Really good to speak to you today. Many thanks for your time. We've been speaking to Faisal University Professor Khalid Batafi. Thank you.
You're most welcome.
Well, in terms of what was targeted by the US, the Fordow uranium enrichment plant is located near the holy city of Qom, where people were killed earlier in the week by Israeli airstrikes. The Isfahan nuclear complex and Natanz, a major enrichment site, were the other areas hit in the US attack. RT correspondent stationed across the Middle East earlier spoke to my colleague Eunice O'Neill about what's been unfolding.
After days of warnings, threats and rising tensions, it happened at 3 a.m. Sunday local time. The U.S. launched a direct strike on Iran's nuclear infrastructure. And according to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, the attack was carried out in full coordination between him and President Trump, both politically and militarily. The IDF and U.S. forces worked side by side. And honestly, by Saturday, the writing was on the wall already. Maybe you remember the U.S. Vice President publicly accused Israel of trying to drag America into war, and that statement looked a lot like the deception campaign we saw at the start of the Israeli operation when Trump and Netanyahu staged a public rift, only to coordinate closely behind the scenes just hours later. Public disagreement, private alignment, well, a very familiar playbook. So 3 nuclear sites were hit, Fordow, Natanz and Isfahan, but Fordow, the underground enrichment facility long seen as the core of Iran's nuclear program, was the real prize. Analysts believed Israel couldn't take it out alone, and now it didn't have to. It got America. U.S. officials say 6 bombs were dropped, 30 cruise missiles launched, 6 jets involved. Fordow reportedly destroyed. Well, Netanyahu's decades-long mission to confront Iran directly has finally become reality. His signature war is here, and he's owning it. He praised America's involvement.
Congratulations, President Trump. Your bold decision to target Iran's nuclear facilities with the awesome and righteous might of the United States will change history. In Operation Rising Lion, Israel has done truly amazing things. But in tonight's action against Iran's nuclear facilities, America has been truly unsurpassed.
with the prospect of a ground operation. According to Medvedev, the critical infrastructure of the nuclear facilities apparently was not damaged or was only slightly damaged, meaning that the enrichment of nuclear materials will continue, and very much so the future production of nuclear weapons. Plus, a number of countries are ready to directly supply Iran with their nuclear weapons. That's according to the Russian side. Iran's political regime is preserved, and with a high degree of probability it will become stronger because the people of Iran are consolidating around their leadership now, including those who did not particularly support it in the past. And the absolute majority of countries in the world are against the actions of Israel and the United States. And now Israel is under attack and waiting for a stronger response from Iran. And also, of course, we heard from a head of Russian Nuclear Energy Corporation, Rosatom, from Alexei Lihachev, and he has said that the U.S. strikes
Goro, Executive Director of the Center for Geopolitical Risk Assessment of the Indonesian University. Many thanks for joining us on the programme today. When the news first broke of the US strikes on Iran, what was your initial reaction?
Well, the initial reaction is, of course, it's very surprising, this one, because actually a couple of days earlier, President Trump trying to provide about 2 weeks and so on and so forth. But eventually it was so quick response by President Trump, presumably because of the pressure by Prime Minister Netanyahu since Friday, the 13th of June. So the situation is very delicate at the moment. No one actually expecting that the war will be likely to continue. Nevertheless, it will be a very difficult situation to predict for, especially because what now happening is still within the context of something like a limited war or special operation by United States and so on and so forth. And of course, it does create a lot of problem on both sides. Of course, when we are considering about the counter force capability, offensive capability that each country capability have, then it's very likely that Israel is still on the advantage at the moment because it's more than 30 to 35% of the ballistic missiles the Iranian has targeted to Israel actually is not quite successful. And at the same time, some target in Israel, especially nuclear facilities in Stafan and Nathan and in Fordo, is not irreversible damage yet. So it's very possible the Iranian could recover the capability to, they would likely to need quite some time. Because the political objective of the American attack is basically very limited. They are not trying to annihilate the Iranian regime. Neither or they would like to a regime change in Iran, not in immediate future. The primary target of current attack by the United States is basically to show that the American basically have some option to trying to something like coercive diplomacy to influence what outcome might be. So I'm still believing that in fact the road to diplomacy is not entirely closed. And I believe that some closed channel is now working out, especially represented by United States and some people in Amman actually trying to find a way. I don't know what might be happening sometime next week because the next 3 days would be a very significant response by both sides. It depends so much on what the Iranian regime would likely to respond to the attack and what President Trump would like to respond, whether would like to escalate or de-escalate. I'm still very much hoping that de-escalation is still possible at this time. Nevertheless, of course, both sides should trying to restrain themselves. Because I think the basic tenet of this conflict, of course, yes, there is some problem of a American double standard and so on and so forth. But one must also remember that actually the Iranian actually should comply to the Non-Proliferation Treaty 1965 that they actually abrogated sometime in 2017 or 2018.
Yeah, indeed, like you say, the next 3 days are going to require some very thoughtful and delicate decision-making. Speaking at the St. Petersburg Economic Forum earlier this week, the Indonesian President Prabowo Subianto condemned Israel's military actions and he called for both sides to return to diplomacy. What kind of reaction of the latest updates do you expect from the global south now that the US has made this very public footing into the conflict with Iran?
Well, I think everybody, most people actually everywhere, including in Indonesia, actually blaming to the Israeli. Of course, the Israelis trying to manipulate the situation and so on and so forth. But just what we must also understand actually, that this is not a single event game. This is iterated and so on and so forth. What's happening today can be separated from what's happening during the last couple of years, including how actually the Iranian regime has since the very beginning, sometime in the 1980s, threatening about the annihilation of the whole Israel territory and so on and so forth. At the same time of what Israeli is, I think, is too coercive by using this one. I don't see this one is that the 3 nuclear reactor is legitimate target, and so on and so forth. I don't think that the Iranians already have a nuclear warhead. Nevertheless, it could also be difficult to deny that breakout time of the Iranian nuclear capability is also improving and shortening. In the past, sometime 10 months ago, they still have about a year, but now I think they have only about 3 and 5 weeks. The problem is that there is no meeting during the last couple of years, especially on how the joint program of a comprehensive talking about nuclear deal is actually productive. So I think this is actually window of opportunity for both sides to back into the negotiation, to trying to understand what actually been doing by the Iranian on the one hand, but the Iranian must also at the same time tone down the rhetoric. So I think, well, just like Leo Tolstoy once said, that you may not be interested in war, but war may be interested in you. War is actually, we must blame for the both sides.
Thank you so much for your time today. It's really good to hear your thoughts. We've been speaking to Krasnanto Anggora, Executive Director of the Center for Geopolitical Risk Assessment of the Indonesian University. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you so much.
We'll be back in 30 minutes with more of the latest news updates. But first, it's the latest episode of Moscow Mules.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Moscow Mules. It's not actually the Moscow Mules, is it? It's the St. Petersburg Mules. We were forced to come to the jewel of Russia's north. We were forced to come here to continue to do the show. I mean, I work very hard, I get very little pay. I have to work with Augie, who's a completely retarded genius, and it always makes me feel inferior. That's why I always pick on him. But anyway, we're here for SPIEF, the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum. Probably one of the biggest meetings of economic minds, government ministers. Like 140 countries, 22,000 people have made their way here. Not that you'd know it looking at the Western media, because if you ask them, ain't nothing happening here in this beautiful city. It's kind of a mixture between, Venice, Vienna, London, Paris. Peter the Great, he was a great dude. He put it all together, built this out of a swamp. What a guy. Hey, but anyway, who needs all this culture and beauty? We're going to head to the United States, where, of course, it's all going perfectly well. The big Don is taking the advice of the people. He was telling us that he was going to listen to, right? Like Tulsi Gabbard, very intelligent lady, great surfer, looks good, very smart. But when she decided to say, hold on a second, stop the press, maybe Iran isn't developing a nuclear weapon. Remember, we talked about this last week. Augie did a very smart little Narevska. He put all this stuff together, and we sort of demonstrated to you that they've been talking to us for years, basically. But when Tulsi Gabbard, the director of national intelligence, says it, what does the big Don say? As Augie would say, it's a show. Run the video, Uggs.
The IC continues to assess that Iran is not building a nuclear weapon, and Supreme Leader Khamenei has not authorized the nuclear weapons program that he suspended in 2003. The IC continues to monitor closely if Tehran decides to reauthorize its nuclear weapons program.
But how close do you personally think that they were to getting one? Because Tulsi Gabbard testified in March that the intelligence community said Iran wasn't building a nuclear weapon.
I don't care what she said. I think they were very close to having it.
I don't care what she said. So you employ this lady because she's exceptionally smart, served in the military, got lots of awards, was a Democrat, but realized the Democrats are a freak show, joins the Republicans, gets appointed to the government as the national intelligence chief, and then she says, hey, you know what? I'm going to do my job. They don't have a nuclear weapon. They're not even going to build a nuclear weapon. And what does your boss say? I don't care what she says. I don't give a damn. There were days away, weeks, possibly hours. I don't know. We do the best interventions known to mankind. Now, you might ask yourselves, when Tulsi left the U.S. military, maybe it all went... Because we're going to talk now about the Big Don's big parade. He likes to do things big. It was kind of a bit of a damn squib. It was the kind of like, you're building yourself up for the big date with that girl, the one, and then it all gets down to action and it just goes It doesn't work out the way you thought. Kind of like Augie, you know, good-looking guy. But when he takes off his clothes, it's not good, believe me. And it was the same for the big Don during the big march past. It was less of a march past than a shuffle past. The dudes all look stoned, tired, depressed, or like they're on Zantac or Xanax, excuse me, maybe Zantac as well. Let's have a look at the video. But what you're going to notice, and when Augie spotted, was it ain't just Xanax they're on. It's sponsored by crypto, by Coinbase. Remember a lot of criticism for the big Don that he kind of rug pulled everybody with his, you know, Trump coin? Run the video, Augie.
Special thanks to our sponsor, UFC. Special thanks to our sponsor, Coinbase.
I'm the Secretary of State. Brought to you by Carl's Jr.
Why do you keep saying that?
Because they pay me every time I do. It's a really good way to make money. You're so smart, why don't you know that?
Yeah. Can you imagine on Red Square in Moscow, you know, sponsored by Dobry Kola or something, like, you know, the paratroopers come by. It's not good. It's not good. The army's the army. But it was definitely a case of a, you know, kind of saunter past as opposed to a march past, as you see here in Russia. It's a show. Now, there's a tradition in the military. I spent a, you know, very modest time in the U.S. military before they invaded Normandy, before they went into Iraq. You got a big steak, a surf and turf steak and prawns, you know, dinner as a sign of the, you know, commitment of your officers. And the officers sometimes serve you the food. Guess what just happened in the States, right, Augie? The boys just got king crab and lobster served them, just out of the blue. Not that there's going to be a big war. You're not going to be sent to die for APAC. That's not going to happen.
Sponsored by Coinbase?
Yeah, sponsored by. So let's just here's some king crab, here's some lobster, and just go over that direction. Yeah, just over there, go over there, and we'll talk to you later on. Yeah, go on, that way. Run the video.
Steak and lobster. You know what that means? We are going to war.
Has steak and lobster.
Lobster, hush puppies, a baked potato under this.
How's your steak and lobster? All right, maybe decent. I'll do it.
Ready for war.
Steak.
Prepare yourself, because we must be going to war or something.
Lobster.
For the war.
Asparagus.
To war we are going.
You know, Ted, think of the name Cruz. Let me just start there. Cruz. You think Tom Cruise, right? Small guy, believes in that isn't real, right? He was one of those Scientologists, right? He's not the only little dude called Cruz who believes that that's not real and doesn't have a clue what he's talking about. There's another guy called Ted Cruz who wants to bomb the shit out of Iran, which is an absolutely ancient culture, by the way. You know, they gave us, you know, astronomy, poetry, beautiful music. Of course, you know, we've got guys in charge right now. You may agree or disagree.
first of several aim points at Fordo.
The Pentagon says B-2 bombers dropped 30,000-pound bunker.
Industry has roots in our country, and the roots of this national industry cannot be destroyed. And I guess time will tell very soon who is right in that respect.
The chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Janelle, he said this was the largest B-2 stealth bomber mission in U.S. history. You know, that's quite a history-making moment there. But what about the timing of this mission? Did we hear anything from the Pentagon about why it happened now?
Yes, Brent. As far as we have been told, it is also the first time these bunker buster bombs were ever used operationally. These bunker buster bombs that only the U.S. has, and therefore only the U.S. could deploy. Now, in terms of the timing and scope, that is a very interesting question, one that Pete Hegseth did not answer in detail. He was asked in that press conference, was there a moment where Donald Trump finally decided to pull the trigger? What did that moment look like? And he said He was fully committed to the peace process, gave Iran an opportunity, but was met with stonewalling. There was a moment when he realized that action had to be taken to minimize the threat. He was also asked about the intelligence. Remember that U.S. intelligence so far has said that Iran's nuclear bomb-making capabilities do not pose an imminent threat. They're not that close. But he said that Trump has looked at all of this and come to the conclusion that the Iran nuclear program is a threat. Now, just rewinding a few days, remember that we saw somewhat of a shift in tone in Donald Trump when Israel first launched those attacks against Iran. It did seem that the administration was trying to distance itself from Israel's actions.
Ask you though about I'm going to put up a chart that you can't see but you know well, which is just the number of installed centrifuges in Iran. If you look at it, start out in the early, in 2011 with a few hundred, then it goes up to maybe 1,000 or so. Then the Iran nuclear deal happens and they go to zero. Trump pulls out of the deal. They start slowly climbing back. And they move in the last few months, really the last year, to a very high number of installed centrifuges. This is with 60% enrichment, which is one step away from weaponized 90% enrichment. You were dealing with them all this time. Did they explain why they so rapidly escalated the number of installed centrifuges to 60%, which is far beyond what you need for peaceful nuclear energy?
Correct. And this is one of the sources of the concern internationally, I would say, not only in the United States or in Israel. There was an international concern about this because while enriching uranium per se is not forbidden, and my Iranian counterparts keep reminding of that. And yes, of course, that is the case. Well, when you are the only country in the world that is enriching 60% and keeps on doing that, there is, of course, a concern and there is a connotation for that. For example, when there was something that Iran didn't like, a resolution against them at the Board of Governors or even some statements, then they would respond by enriching more or adding more cascades or adding centrifuges. And in my conversations with them, I have always been insisting that this sort of dynamic was not a healthy dynamic, because it was pushing the envelope and indicating that they were having this stockpile with the underlying connotation of ulterior moves, which we cannot say what they would be. But the concern was obviously there.
Rafael, I know you have to leave, but I want to ask you one last question, which is, you're one of the few people who has negotiated with the Iranians. How do you think they will respond to this?
Well, quite clearly, there is one thing, Farid, that we have to recognize. This is a country at war, not only with Israel, now apparently with the United States. So this changes the whole dynamic of what has heretofore being like a long saga, and you have been yourself following this for many, many years. We have discussed this in many places, where you